So you really want to install an internet-connected camera inside your house? Well, today on The Hookup, we're going to look at 10 indoor cameras from 8 different brands and determine if any of them have what it takes to overcome the massive privacy concerns that come with installing a camera inside your home. I am a huge advocate for security cameras. When done right, they increase security and peace of mind more than any other gadget out there. But I'm also really concerned with privacy, and those two worlds are constantly at odds with one another. Moving cameras indoors makes the situation infinitely more delicate. So today, we're going to determine if it's ever possible to have a camera inside your house without introducing a possible invasion of privacy. What am I talking about when I say invasion of privacy? Well, there are 3 main sources that you should be concerned with. Actually, hang on a second. Much better. As I was saying, there are 3 main cases where your privacy could be compromised. Case 1 is the one that we've seen on the news. Some hacker living in their parents' basement with nothing better to do decides to gain access to a camera feed and use the two-way audio to spy on and terrorize families and kids. Case 2 is another valid concern, where bored or unethical employees at camera companies who are given administrator access to cameras for valid reasons end up using them to spy on users, watch their recorded footage, and generally invade their privacy. Case 3 is an unfortunately very real potential privacy breach that comes from governments either forcing or giving subsidies to companies to provide them with a backdoor that could be used to spy on domestic or international citizens. I know it sounds like a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, but it is unfortunately very real and has been proven to have happened multiple times in the not so distant past. So maybe I don't need this. The problem with these privacy concerns is that camera companies can implement security measures to stop hackers and make you feel better about case 1, but cases 2 and 3 are directly related to negligence at the manufacturer level, so they can't really be mitigated by any specific camera features. So from this point on in the video, I'm going to look at these cameras through 2 different lenses, and you're going to need to decide for yourself which one is right for you. First, I'm going to assume that the camera companies are trustworthy and the claims that they make are truthful. I'll analyze the features of each camera and tell you which ones I think perform the best. Then, you can step into my shoes, and we will trust no one. I'll show you how to set up an indoor camera to be completely secure to the point where you could feel comfortable installing it in your own bedroom, if that's what you're into. I'd recommend watching the whole video and then making your decision, but feel free to use the timestamps if you already know what you're interested in. Before we get started, let's see which cameras are on the chopping block today. From least expensive to most, we've got the Wyze V2, the Blink Mini, the EasyViz C1C, the Eufy 2K, the Wyze PTZ, the Sonoff GK200, IoTech's UCAM, Eufy's Pan and Tilt, the Reolink E1 Pro, and the SimCam AI. Here we go. Almost all the major camera breaches that have made the news have come from login and password combinations leaked by unrelated websites, but you can be sure that those reported stories are only the tip of the iceberg, and invasions of privacy are far more likely than we realize. Of the cameras that I reviewed, there are a few different methods of ensuring that your camera feed is secure and safe from hackers. For instance, the Blink Mini requires all users to use 2-factor authentication on their accounts, but it uses email to provide the security code. And while that's better than nothing, it's likely that someone who reuses the same username and password over and over will also do the same for their email account. So that method is pretty ineffective. Wyze offers 2-factor authentication using SMS text messages, which is significantly more secure. And Eufy plans to release 2-factor authentication in August of this year, but there's still no word onto whether it will be email or text message based. UCAM's main selling point is the use of blockchain technology to encrypt your video feed and login. I'm pretty skeptical of this claim since blockchain usually requires a network of private computers to verify the blocks, but at the very least, UCAM addresses the issue of insecure passwords by using a randomly generated private key to link your camera to your app, rather than requiring a username and password. Once your camera is locked to a mobile device, it cannot be accessed anywhere else without the approval of the master device. SimCam provides protection from hacking by allowing you to activate something that's called LAN mode, which only allows cameras to be viewed if you are on the same local network. The ability to deactivate LAN mode is limited to pre-registered devices, but it can happen remotely. This is my least favorite implementation of hacking countermeasures, but at least it's something. Of the cameras that have implemented measures to protect your privacy against hackers, or will be in the near future, here are the top performers. At number 1, the UCAM Pan and Tilt has the highest video quality and the most impressive app customization. You can set it to detect any motion, just people, just pets, loud noises, or even specifically alert you if it detects crying. I was able to get an advanced version of their HomeKit compatible firmware, and the one thing that struck me was the complete lack of lag in the HomeKit video stream, which is as close to instantaneous as I've ever seen in a video camera. The UCAM can simultaneously play video in the Eufy app, HomeKit Live View, RTSP feed, and record to the local SD card, which pretty much covers all the bases. Unfortunately, the HomeKit implementation is only for HomeKit compatibility and not HomeKit secure compatibility, which means you're still going to need to use the Eufy app for most functionality, including common features like pan and tilt and reviewing saved footage. I'm also really disappointed that the Eufy Pan and Tilt still uses the 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi band. In 2020, I think it's kind of unacceptable for companies to be producing high bandwidth devices that rely on the congested and inferior 2.4 GHz band. Aside from that, assuming that Eufy does deliver two-factor authentication in August, the Eufy Pan and Tilt was the best camera of all the cameras that I tested. That is, of course, assuming that the companies themselves can be trusted. At number 2, the UCAM performance was also pretty respectable. And even though it's still using that 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi band, I did appreciate the addition of an Ethernet port, though I'm not sure how often it's going to be used by their typical customer. Even though it's only 1080p, the UCAM video looks great, and the UCAM app offers both local continuous recording to an SD card or cloud video storage that's supposedly encrypted on your device before it's stored on the UCAM servers. Since UCAM's whole selling point is security of your data, it seems like they might have better policies in place as a company, but I'm personally not in the business of trusting companies to uphold their promises. And again, it's a decision that you're going to have to make for yourself. The Wyze Cam has two things going for it. Number 1, it's incredibly cheap. And number 2, it has the same cool extra features as the Eufy, like person detection and sound detection. But in my test, the Wyze had the worst video quality and really struggled in situations where the lighting was inconsistent in the scene. I'm also a little concerned about the direction of the company, as they seem to be moving towards a more cloud and subscription-based model. None of the other cameras really were anything special, the worst of which was the Blink Mini. If you're not familiar with the Blink cameras, they're these easy-to-use, versatile, battery-powered cameras, and in my outdoor tests, they were one of the top performers. The Blink Mini, on the other hand, managed to include all of the shortcomings of a battery-powered camera while still needing to be plugged in. It seems like they just took the exact same software that was in the battery-powered camera and they threw it into some cheap indoor hardware. This means no recording to the device, no person detection, and the live stream times out after 60 seconds on a plug-in camera. Also, guess what? You're going to need to pay monthly for the cloud storage. I don't know why the Blink team thought that this camera needed to exist, but you shouldn't buy it. The SimCam AI is expensive, $130 to be exact, so you'd expect it to do more than other cameras. The idea behind the SimCam is actually really cool. It has on-device AI computer vision to do things like object tracking, pet detection, vehicle detection, and even person detection with facial recognition. You can imagine how important it is to handle these services locally on the camera in order to protect your privacy. So the SimCam seems like a great idea. Guess what? If you block the SimCam from the internet, none of the locally processed AI works. I don't understand why they would go through all the trouble to produce a locally processed AI camera and then have it be reliant on the internet for delivering and archiving the locally stored footage. It just doesn't make any sense. It's also worth noting that the SimCam has motorized pan, but it's loud enough that you basically could never use it without drawing significant attention to the camera. The SimCam does use the 5 GHz Wi-Fi band though, so it's got that going for it. Neither the Reolink, EasyViz, nor Sonoff offer two-factor authentication, or the ability to bind a camera to a specific mobile device, so they don't really have any built-in defense against hacking. And while the EasyViz actually produced a decent image at a great price, their parent company Hikvision has had some serious privacy-related allegations made against them by the US government, and the EasyViz loses all of its functionality without an internet connection, so you should probably skip it. The Reolink E1 Pro, on the other hand, is the camera that I've decided to use in my house to replace my custom firmware Wyze V2. As I mentioned before, even though these camera companies have made an effort to prevent hacking, you still have to trust their claims and that the companies themselves will keep your data safe and private. UCAM, for instance, claims that the footage is encrypted on your device before it's sent to their cloud, making it impossible for them to view your footage because they would need to have your private key. But since your private key is viewable in plain text in their app, couldn't they just retrieve it from the app and then view your footage? Unfortunately, claims like the ones made by UCAM are difficult or impossible to verify and require you to just kind of take their word for it. That's why, in every case, the safest thing for you to do is to trust no one but yourself. As is my recommendation for every security camera ever, you should either completely block them for the internet or assume that the footage is not private. This is truly the only way to protect your privacy against all possible threats. There are two problems with this solution. First, not all routers have the ability to create rules to block specific devices from using the internet. And second, some cameras really don't like having their internet taken away from them, and they end up losing most, if not all, of their functionality. In fact, every single camera that I tested except for the Reolink failed in some way when blocked from the internet, some of them more spectacularly than others. So let's talk about that Reolink E1 Pro. Not only is it the highest resolution camera that I tested, coming in at 2560 by 1440, but the app is fully functional without any connection to the internet. Motion detection works, video playback works, pan and tilt works, setting changes work. Everything just works as long as you are on the same local network or have a VPN set up for when you're away. Another huge selling point, this camera connects to your 5 GHz Wi-Fi network, meaning faster transfer speeds and less network channel congestion. It has 2 RTSP streams, both a main stream and a lower resolution substream, and the pan and tilt functionality is nearly silent. If you aren't able to lock down your cameras at your firewall, I wouldn't recommend the Reolink to you due to the fact that it doesn't have two-factor authentication. But if you can and you want a great indoor camera with virtually zero privacy concerns, the E1 Pro is unbeatable in the space. Do be careful when purchasing the camera though, because there is a cheaper version called the Reolink E1 that lacks the ability to output an RTSP stream and does have lower resolution. One other option that I'm not going to spend too much time talking about is custom firmware for these cameras. There are projects out there to open source firmware for both the Wyze style cameras and a project that it's in its infancy to use custom firmware on the Son-off camera, but in my opinion, if you're capable of installing these custom firmwares, you're going to be much better off buying the Reolink E1 Pro and manually blocking it from the internet. If you're interested in how I quarantine my IoT products, check out my Ultimate Smart Home Network series. And stay tuned for an update video within the next few weeks where I'm going to upgrade from my USG to the new Dream Machine Pro. Thank you to all of my awesome patrons over at Patreon for continuing to support my channel and making it possible for me to make comprehensive comparison videos like this one. If you're interested in supporting my channel, please check out the links down in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button and consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching The Hookup.